Marcus is a writer, consultant, and entrepreneur. He's executive director of thought leadership at C3 and is a co-founder and partner of Rethink. He publishes a monthly newsletter entitled Rethinking, and it is about the intersection of technology, society, and communication. His writings have been published in multiple titles such as GQ, AD, Spiegel, and Stern, and Der Zeit. He has written multiple books, which have been translated into multiple languages. And these books include The Me Economy, I'll Come Later in the Morning, Rethinking Luxury, and Digital Exhaustion. He thinks about the future of work and has written about the future of work before the pandemic, and now, in light of what has happened recently, I think his thoughts will be very interesting to hear. And so I'd like to introduce Marcus Enders. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thanks. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm Marcus. I'm from Berlin. Welcome to my city. Beautiful city, beautiful weather outside. You have a terrific program ahead of you. But if you ever find the time to maybe sneak out of the hotel for a few minutes, maybe in the evening, I strongly encourage you to do that because you are so close to Tiergarten, which is a wonderful, huge park, and many of you will already have done that yesterday. So do enjoy the conference, but also do enjoy Berlin. So today, we want to talk about hybrid work and how hybrid work has, for all its obvious positive sides, also has some downsides, which can lead to what I call digital fatigue. And I also want to tell you, of course, about some strategies how to deal with that. But before we do that, we heard that, I mean, some of you may be jet lagged, you all have been traveling, some of you may have spent an hour or two at the hotel bar yesterday, I don't know. So I would like to invite you for a little tiny exercise. And don't worry, it's not going to be embarrassing. No one has to come up stage here for me. I would just like to ask you to picture in your mind a typical work situation. A typical situation where you are at work. So where are you? Which kind of room are you in? What's the furniture? What's the tech? Who else is there with you, maybe? How does it smell? How does it feel? So just get that picture in your head. And I think that's easy, right? No, and I guess everyone has that picture, and I would like to now make a guess. And that guess is, had I asked you the exact same thing, say, 3 years ago, then it might have looked something like this, right? You in a conference room together with colleagues or clients. Or like this, sitting in front of a computer, doing work together. But since I asked you now, after 2.5 years of COVID and lockdowns, it's quite likely that this picture looked more like this, right? This is a typical work situation for every one of us, right? Or maybe like this, alone in the home office, which may not always look as stylish as it does here, but you get my point. Now, I'm not telling you anything new here, but the point I want to make is that the idea we have of what work is a social construct. You know, it's fluid. This concept can change, and it changed a lot, obviously, during the last 2.5 years. And this question, why does work look the way it does, and could it all be quite different, is exactly what I've been dealing with since at least 2008, when I wrote my first book. And I'm sorry for the German titles. I can really quickly translate them to give you an idea of how my thinking on the topic has changed. That's why I'm showing this to you. So on the left-hand side, you can see the first book, 2008, Tomorrow I'll Be Late for Work, which was a rallying cry for mobile and flexible work, where I said, hey, we don't all have to go to the office every day, right? We can work from anywhere. We have the tech now. Back then, that sounded a little crazy to many, and it took some years and the pandemic to make it come true. But also on the right-hand side, you can see the latest book, Digital Fatigue, which shows that my thinking about remote work, hybrid work, has become more skeptical, more critical, and I would like to share with you today why that is so, and I'd also like to share some of the research I've done for the books. Now, hybrid work, it's obviously not going away, right? All the business leaders I'm talking to these days are thinking about reducing office space, cutting back on business travel. Google and many others even think about adapting the compensation structure regarding on where you work from. So it's not going away, right? And if you look at companies such as Coinbase, I'm sure you will be familiar with Coinbase. They went public earlier this year. And if you go public in the US, if you do an IPO, you have to provide an address, as you can see here on this form. But the thing with Coinbase is, and you can see that in the highlighted spaces, they don't have an address. They are a remote-only company. And this just shows how far we've come. You can even do an IPO without having a physical address, right? Now, many of the employees seem to actually like this. They seem to like the new hybrid working world. They feel more productive in the home office. They say it's easier to, to juggle work and family. Nobody misses the commute. And interestingly, we've even gotten to know our colleagues better, right? Via remote work. We've been in people's living rooms, and we've even seen their pets and their families. So there are definitely some upsides to hybrid work. But now this, what we've called new work, is mainstream. My question is it all positive? I think you all know it's not, right? There are downsides. So for example, we are always on, all of us. We are always working. And I think you can relate to that. We can't really say when work stops. And many people find that really hard because work is just going on. It's just seeping into every part of our lives. And people feel stressed. The health insurers who do these kinds of samples and collect these kinds of figures, they say this is a real health problem, and increasingly so, and this is because of the way we work today. So, we do have some problems here. I think one of the reasons why this is so is because we all collaborate all the time. Collaboration, that's the word we're all looking for. And if you look at the latest research, it's up to 85% of our working time we spend collaborating, in tools, in chats, and calls. And I don't know about your math, but I would say that leaves only like 15% of my time for the actual work. Except if you say that collaboration is work, and yes, it is, but maybe not so much, maybe not that much. We all feel like there's more meetings with Teams and Zoom, etc. And it is. Microsoft did the math, and it's 2.5 more meetings than before Corona. Because it's so easy to get a meeting, right? And to put something into the calendar. So we all have more meetings, and also we have more ad hoc meetings, more spontaneous meetings. And all this is really bad for our concentration. It's really bad for concentration. And it leads to what I call, often, for many of us, can lead to what I call digital fatigue. Now, what can we do to finally make this promise of the new ways of working come true? Because the promise was it would make us more productive, more creative, happier. it would free us from the chains to the desk, but instead we are just chained to the screen now. But what can we do now? Usually, experts divide this into 3 areas. That's bricks, bytes, behavior. Bricks, the office. Bytes, the tools, the tech. And behavior, the culture. And we're going to look at all 3 now. And after that, I'd really like to discuss this with you. So bricks, the office. We are slowly going back to the office. I guess many of us are, right? Depending on where you live. But what kind of office are we coming back to? Often, it's this kind of office. Like it's a modern, open space, open plan office. No walls, desk sharing, lots of plants maybe. It looks beautiful. But it's also all about collaboration. It's not great for concentration. It can even look like this. This is Facebook, and I'm not so sure I would like to work there every day. Is this the kind of office I want to go back to? Probably I'd rather stay in my fancy home office, right? And I don't know about you, but all the modern offices that I visit these days look like this. People wearing headphones because it's the only way they can actually concentrate and work there. And that's quite a robust body of research backing this. Open office structures lead to less concentration and more stress. But still, this is the kind of office that's getting built. This is the new style of office. And why is that? Because those offices were planned before Corona, before COVID. Back then, this was fancy, this was hot, this was the thing that architects like. But looking back at the way we work now, which often is this, even after Corona and even when we get back to the office, we still do Teams calls all day long and Zoom calls all day long. And for this kind of work, the open space offices are not really well suited. Instead, the perfect office, I guess, for a post-COVID world would look like this. Lots of phone booths where you can do Teams calls. But is this the kind of office you would like to go back to? Probably not. So the jury is still out. How much office we need, what it should look like, and what we will need it for in the first place. And many say it's probably going to be the digital office anyway, which is already here, Teams. So bytes. Bytes, the tools, the tech. I understand that there are many tech people here, so this might be interesting for you especially. A few years ago, when I spoke to people, I still had to explain what is a collaboration tool. I obviously don't have to explain that today anymore. We are all on Teams and Zoom and Slack, you name it. And we know how to work it now. So we know where the mute button is. But still, I would argue, and many experts argue, that we already today see a collaboration overload, that there's too much collaboration, and these tools obviously are making it, well, not better. And if you remember that figure from earlier on, where I said that we spend 85% of our time collaborating, it's often because of those tools. Now, what can we do? I think we all need to learn to do much more asynchronous communication. Asynchronous communication, I'm sure you are familiar with that. What we do now is synchronous, right? We do the same thing at the same time, and you are not looking at your phones or just doing something else. So this is synchronous communication. Asynchronous communication is email, chat, etc. And the great thing about asynchronous communication is that it's not interrupting. It doesn't disturb your concentration. So if you do much more of that in your companies, and you have to train it, you have to learn it, you have to say, I'm not taking that call now. Can you just give me that information in an asynchronous way? That helps a lot. Making implicit rules, explicit. Now what does that mean? To give you an example, let's say you still do email. I don't know if you do, but let's say you still do email. What in your organization is an acceptable time to respond to an email? What would you say? Can I have some opinions? Is it 1 hour? Is it 1 day? How fast should you respond to an email? 2 hours. 2 hours, thank you. Anything else? 6, okay, so, yeah. Same day. Next day, okay, so 2 hours, next day. Now that's a huge difference, isn't it? Depends on the email, thank you. Depends on the sender, yeah, totally. But there are companies who are setting rules how long, as a maximum, it can take to respond to an email. What's acceptable? And often it's more like a day or 2 days, because email is actually quite slow medium. It's not chat, obviously. So, but in any case, my point is, everybody thinks that everybody in the organization knows and has the same understanding of this, but they don't. They don't. That's implicit rules, and you have to make them explicit. You have to say in our organization it's 1 day. Super okay. You can also say in our organization it's 2 hours. It's also okay. You just have to make it explicit. You should write it down, I guess. And this is what many organizations, many tech companies do these days. They write it down. So this is, for example, from Dropbox. Dropbox has what they call a virtual first toolkit, where they have been doing just that. They have been putting down some rules for digital collaboration for everyone. So for example, they have core collaboration hours, 4 hours a day, which matches more or less with time zones all over the world, so you can be part of that collaboration wherever you live. But that also means that before and after those core collaboration hours, you are free to do your deep work, your concentrated work. So that helps. Also, still speaking about the tools, the tech, I've spoken to many representatives from also big tech companies such as Microsoft, for example, designers, and they said, we've done a pretty bad job in the past of designing our tools in a way that they don't interrupt you all the time, and they want to make that better now. They are aiming to, and this is Microsoft, but many others do the same thing, they are aiming to design for focus, to let you focus on what you do and not interrupt you all the time. So there's hope. There's hope that the tools are getting better too. Behavior. The culture. So many people say the culture, that's the most important part, right? And I tend to agree, the culture in a company. And there are many things that could be said about that. But I would like to share just one idea with you on culture. I feel like we don't even talk about work-life balance anymore. It's a bit old school, it's a bit old-fashioned. Everybody's talking about work-life blending these days. And work-life blending means it's a good thing that you don't separate work-life and private life anymore. You blend those two. And I don't know about you, but I find this a bit problematic, because if everything becomes work, then how do I explain to my kids, who are 8 and 12 now, what this concept was? And since you are all language nerds here, I thought it's probably okay to introduce you to a very German word. And I believe there's not even an English translation for it, at least not one word. Or am I wrong? Any ideas here? How to translate Feierabend into English? It's probably the end of the working day. It's time off. That would be translations. But as you all know, where there's a word, there's also a concept. And the idea of Feierabend it's much bigger than the word. The idea of the Feierabend in Germany means that in the old days, a few years back, you could say, schönen Feierabend, have a good Feierabend, or ich habe jetzt Feierabend, I have Feierabend now, which means I'm leaving work, and I'm leaving work behind, maybe in the office, right? And I'm leaving the tools of my work somewhere else. And I'm doing something else, spending time with friends and family or whatever. And I find it increasingly difficult to explain that concept to my kids, because it's actually already dead. Now, those of you who may not even have a word for that can still, I hope, relate that something has changed. Something has changed. The idea of having something like a Feierabend is gone, and I personally find that difficult. Now, what can we do? What can we do? The Feierabend will not come back, but we can do things about the culture in our organizations. So, for example, what many employees do, and their companies are encouraging them to do that, is they disclose their preferences. They say, this is the best way to contact me, when, how, on which channel. How to work with me. How to work, that's good. So this gentleman, for example, has done that on his Twitter profile. The phone is not en vogue these days, as you can see. Also, what you can do culture-wise in your company, and you don't have to be the bosses of your company to introduce that. You can introduce the concept of deep work. We've done that in our company also. And I don't know if you're familiar with the managers and the makers schedule. Have you heard that? So if you look at your calendars, at your digital calendars, you can see whether you have a manager's schedule or a maker's schedule. A manager's schedule looks like this, especially on the left-hand side. So many tiny appointments, many tiny colorful blocks in your calendar. Half an hour, half an hour, half an hour. And you're running, or rather clicking, from one meeting to the next. That's a manager's schedule. And it might work well for a manager person, because a manager would go into that meeting saying, okay, what do we have here? What do I have to decide? Thank you, next meeting. But the problem is that increasingly, all of us have manager schedules. We all have these kinds of calendars where we just hop from one meeting to the next, and then again there's no time to concentrate. So what we would need instead is a maker's schedule. If you want to make things, to be productive, you need longer uninterrupted phases of concentration, and you can see that in your calendar. And again, this is something you can introduce in your company, and you don't have to do it every day. You can do it, for example, 2 days a week. This is what we do. Every Tuesday morning and Thursday afternoon, it's deep work. Helps a lot. But finally, in terms of culture, I think we really need to educate our leaders, because managers, leaders are often the worst person when it comes to asynchronous work and to letting people have their deep work phases. Typically, managers will always, call and say, do you have a minute? Can I ask you this? Can I ask you that? It's always interrupting, and that goes on top of the constant distraction that we already have. So we need to train remote leaders. Leading in a remote world is different. Now, why am I thinking this is all such a pressing issue? Because all of the things that I've just shown you, I believe, are just the beginning. We are just seeing the beginning of something bigger. And it could be that now is our last chance to act, actually. Why is that? Because it has a lot to do with technology. And as you all know, there's the exponential nature of technological change. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the exponential nature of viruses lately, but still, Moore's law, you remember that? Everything is changing not just fast, but ever faster. And this is an exponential concept that is really hard for the human mind to grasp. And I'm pretty sure that quite soon we will have a constant digital layer between us and reality. It could be glasses, you know, we don't know that yet. Apple is coming up with one, and that might be beautiful, maybe everyone wants to have it. Could be glasses. It could also be voice, you know, where you have an AI in your earphone and talk to the tech. Like in this movie, I don't know, has anyone seen this movie? It's a movie called Her, where a young man is talking to an AI all the time, and this AI gets to know him better and better, and he falls in love with the AI, basically. Which is a movie, but still the idea, I guess, is right, then that when my kids, 8 and 12 now, when they start working, they most likely will have this constant digital layer, be it voice, be it glasses, be it something else. And if that happens, then not only does digital collaboration never stop, then also work never stops. It's going to be always there. I don't know about you, but for me this would be a dystopian vision. I would not like that. But I strongly believe that we can still shape this future, but we have to start now. Thank you. So, questions, remarks. Now it's up to you. Can you relate to what I've just told you? Do you disagree? Who has something? I believe we have microphones, and there's one lady over here. I believe we have microphones. Could you wait for a second, because there's the mic.
Hello. I have a question. I would like to hear your thoughts about that. What I've noticed is that many people come back to the office, but they take with them their work at home behavior. To give you a concrete example, so people are sitting in the office at their desk, and when there's a meeting, they don't gather in the meeting room anymore, but they take the meeting from their desk via Teams.
Yeah.
And I was always wondering, what is the type of need that people have that makes them do that? What is the gain? Why do they do that? Why don't they meet in person anymore?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
That's a great question, and I think we've seen it all, right? People sitting even side by side, doing a video call. Frankly, I have to say, it's quite rational to do that, because one, you will probably look at a presentation together, which is much easier in Teams. Two, you will probably have a kind of hybrid meeting anyway, where someone is, dialing in from somewhere else. So what you could then do is you could go to one of those old-fashioned meeting rooms, with a huge table, and everyone is looking at the same screen. But then, usually, acoustics is not great. It's hard to see everyone. And this is what the IT departments say, that those old-style meeting rooms are getting out of fashion really, really fast. And I've heard from Microsoft and Google that they're phasing those out. They don't need those big meeting rooms anymore, because they don't work really well. People just want to do what you just described. They want to sit in front of a screen because then you hear well, people can see you well, you can all look at the same presentation. It's not nice, I agree, but it's rational. And this is what I meant. You go back to the office to still look at your Teams all day long, and that's a huge unsolved question. Why do we need offices then? So, anyone else? There's a gentleman. Can we have the microphone for this gentleman here?
Thanks, Mark, for your time. As you know, one of the subsequences of working from home is the need of some workplaces to use monitoring softwares like Time Doctor, for instance. I need to know from your perspective the impact of using such monitoring methodology to check if the employees are working on time and working perfectly, or it's important to focus only on the quality of their work. Just need to know the psychological impact of this on the employees. Thank you.
Yeah. But I think to take one step back, for many managers today, it is still difficult to adapt to a world where they don't see their underlings all day long. Managers like to, many, not all of course, but many liked in the old days like to do management by walking around. If everyone is there in front of their screen, then they work. Maybe. And many leaders still feel super uncomfortable with the idea that they can't do that anymore. That everyone's sitting at home and maybe, I think my sound is off. I think I'm getting another mic. Sorry, give me a second. Sure. Check. This one's not working either. Okay, so let me try without a mic. So I guess so I guess this is one reason. This is one reason why many companies adopt this kind of, let's say, surveillance software, where they can then again check what everyone's up to. Having said that, there's also an upside for the employee often, because if you track your own time, you can also say, okay, 8 hours done for today, right? Instead of clocking more and more hours. So I think there can be definitely an upside to this kind of tracking software. And it depends on the industry you're in. For example, I work in an industry where it has always been the norm to track your hours, because this is what you bill to your client, and then it's not such a huge step, I believe.
Hi, my question is less about control and more about creativity.
Right.
So I think was nothing more painful in COVID than trying to have a collaborative meeting over Microsoft where you have to ideate and get people to talk with ideas. What are your thoughts about that? Like this, brainstorming creativity that comes from face-to-face, human-to-human contact, that is like drawing blood from a stone through Teams.
Yeah. Well, I think many people found that painful. And many people were longing for the days when they could be back in the office. Everyone would be standing in front of a whiteboard, and you could brainstorm together, and it would be more social also. I find, though, that that is not always true, frankly. I mean, there's some early research saying that online collaboration, even for creative things, can work better, can work even better than the physical one, especially for introverted types. Because typically in a brainstorming or in a meeting, it's always the same people who do the talking, right? Who are the loudest, who are the most opinionated. And there's early research showing that in an online collaboration creative situation, the more quiet ones can also be heard. So I guess that can be an upside. But in the end, I have to say it depends on the team. If you feel more comfortable being in the same room, and if you can do that, then do it again. But I mean, there's so many international and distributed teams who've always been doing it in a remote way, and who also get terrific results. So I believe it is possible. And I don't know about you, but in my digital life, since 6 months or so, it's been all Miro. Okay, it's all been Miro boards. So in the old days, you were standing in front of the whiteboard in the office. Now you're sitting in front of a Miro board, and it works just as well, I feel. Sorry. I mean, and many of the younger colleagues in our company maybe even prefer it that way. Yeah. So I think the other thing about creativity is that there is research about how creativity happens, and it usually happens in steps, and one of the steps is that after you collect lots of information, you need time for yourself to come up with something unique and new. And we are increasingly robbing ourselves of this time to focus, and this is more of a problem, I believe, with creativity. Yeah. Okay, this gentleman over there. Sorry.
Yeah, so the open floor plan office as a concept has got to be probably 20 years old now, and I was kind of curious if you've had conversations with architects working on, sort of new physical spaces.
Yeah, okay, so you're asking about what architects think about this, right?
Yeah, in terms of, what does the physical office look like?
Yeah,
So that would very much be an architect thing.
Yeah. Well, there's this huge debate in architect circles today, and I sometimes talk to architects and real estate developers also. They're all a bit unsure, obviously, about how much office there still will be needed in the future, how good of an investment that is. But since real estate is often a long-term investment, these offices still do get built. So, and what kind of offices? So architects also feel like they maybe overdid it in the past with taking out the walls and taking out the doors. That they are starting to put doors and walls back into the offices. They do see that, but most architects, nobody wants to go back to that old cubicle situation, obviously, so that can't be the future either. So the architect's answer usually is, you need different zones for different activities, so you need collaboration zones and you need zones for focused work. And that may be an architect's answer, but I would say it's probably not enough. It's probably not enough. I would argue that what you just said, most architects haven't yet understood that. They haven't yet understood that people go back to the office to still be on Teams and Zoom. So we need walls and doors, I guess. So,
Yes.
right
here.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
It's a note. One of the things which is coming along with our digital life is FOMO, the fear of missing out. So, in short, I would say, try the JOMO, the joy of missing out. Put your phone in the drawer, put it in the dishwasher for a few hours, put it somewhere where you are not seeing the screen. Try it. It is joyful.
Thank you. Super. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. I'm Naho from Atlassian, and some of you probably know, but we make Jira and Trello. Obviously, we love collaboration, but you mentioned about collaboration overload, and I think my team agrees that happens. As much as we love collaboration, it takes a lot of brain energy, and as you mentioned, deep work is definitely important. I'm wondering if you have any suggestion of like ratio balance between deep work and collaboration.
Right. Well, it obviously depends on the team. It obviously depends on the kind of work you do. There will be areas where you need more collaboration, and there will be areas where you need more alone time or focused time. But I think what Dropbox is suggesting, like a 50-50 split, sounds good to me. Like they have 4 hours of core collaboration, as I said, core collaboration hours, where you are supposed to have your tools on, and be available, and have your phone on, etc. But again, this also means that you would have 4 hours of focus time each day. That would be a lot. That would be super for most people. And I believe, and I really do not want to say anything bad about collaboration tools. No, really. I mean, they have made our lives so much easier. It's so much better, actually, to be working with Slack and whatever, and Atlassian software also. But they tend to give us a culture where we have to be always on, and where if you're not part of the conversation for even a day, you kind of drop the ball, and everything moved on without you. And then you have to start reading the backlogs and who said what, etc. So this is not great, and that's why I'm saying we still have to learn how to use those tools. 4 hours, I guess, at most. So, here's the gentleman.
So we have been talking about people working in an office, forced to go home, and then now kind of going back to the office, right? I am from the dark side. I've been working home office before COVID.
Yeah.
And I kind of developed a pretty good, not life-work balance, but a online work or home office work to going to the office that's like 4 hours from me. What happened during COVID, I've been locked up as everyone, for 2.5 years, and it started to feel that, hey, this is not good. Everybody felt that. Well, what happens now is I could go to the office, only 4 hours by train. Great. Nobody is in the office. Any thoughts on that? I know.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. People keep saying that we need offices for collaboration, to bring people together, to have meetings, to entertain our clients, etc., etc. I am not sure that is true because I'm speaking to many employees who say, I'm now going to the office to have some quiet time because it's empty. To get away from the kids, to have a place where I can close the door. I am not sure it really makes sense for companies to entertain these huge office buildings just for that. But right now, this is the situation, yeah, definitely. So the office can be also a place to escape the home office, I guess, yeah. So, and you have to tell me when we're running out of time, right?
I will.
And okay, oh, this lady in the back, sorry.
Right, so hi, thanks a lot for the presentation. I read a study which is done pre-COVID time between the different places where people work. Basically, the argument is that if you work from the home office pre-COVID, you have a disadvantage for getting a promotion because basically most of your work colleagues are working in the office and they have exposure to their managers. Now that following the gentleman's idea, if now we go back to the office, we actually see an empty office. I'm wondering what your take on this about is, whether there would be any effects on, say, things like promotion and exposure. How do we deal with this in the after COVID time?
Yeah. Okay, so I've not seen any recent research on that topic. I have seen the kind of research that you mentioned, that before COVID it was probably not such a good idea to always be in the home office if you wanted to advance your career. So I can only give you my gut feeling. And my gut feeling is that one of the upsides of this new hybrid work is that things like this have changed. You don't have to be in the office anymore, so your boss sees you and thinks you're working. Also because your colleagues are not there either, and your boss is probably not there either. So I guess there are some aspects that have changed for the better, and this would be one of them, I guess. So you can make a career in an organization without having to be in the office, every day, long hours.
I have a twofold question, so thanks for presenting all of this. At the beginning, you presented a couple of statistics, and you said, I think it was 80% people are stressed, and I was wondering, okay, how does that, how can you put this in juxtaposition to before? So how was this measured, and how much noise potentially is in there? Because obviously we all we're all stressed during a pandemic, so that doesn't really, so how can you relate here? And well, my 2 cents to some of the things you said, I think, at least from my perspective, and okay, we had a hybrid workspace before, and like I have a lot of introverts in my team, so we have asynchronic communication even more than before, and we're super happy with that. But some things that you said, I feel, are more a clash of generations rather than a problem with hybrid work or things like that. And I mean, maybe it's not opposing to what you say, but this is just an essence of what I felt from your presentation.
No, thank you. That's a great question. So, concerning the first part of your question, this 80%, and I think I had mentioned this is coming from the health insurers in Germany. So these are German figures from health insurance companies. And you are absolutely right. This will have various reasons, obviously. So it's been going up. It's been going up over the years. And obviously, in COVID times, there are many reasons why people can feel stressed. But what the sources say, the sources of these figures, the health insurers say that this has also something to do with the way we work. Not exclusively, but also. So it contributes, obviously, to this feeling of stress. And the other thing, if I understood you correctly, you said this is also a question of different generations, maybe. Could be, but I mean, I'm definitely older than you, so I might be part of that generation that finds it harder to adapt to this new working world. Could be. But what I hear from lots of younger colleagues, and especially the young digital ones, is that they find this topic of always being on and always working extremely relevant. And at least in my experience, it's often the younger colleagues who are better at turning off their gadgets and turning off their phones and doing something else and saying, hey, it's 8 in the evening now, I'm just not working anymore. So it is, I guess, a topic for everyone, and it could be, it's my hope actually, that the younger generation is better equipped to deal with it. Yeah.
Hi, it's Tyler from London here. So I have an observation and a question, and I think my first observation was of the younger generation, though I do not count myself as of the younger generation, but once upon a time I was. And I do remember a couple of years ago working in consulting, we always had to go into the office in London in Canary Wharf, and it was like, I was working on the 6th floor, but I learned a lot more by walking around to different teams, sitting down, meeting people, asking them what they're doing. And by doing that, I was able to learn a lot more about the company, the culture, and learn a lot more about what other people were doing. I was able to get onto different projects just by going around and networking within the company. And it's more of an observation now that having a remote company, those opportunities are not necessarily there for people that do not know their way around the organization. So it would be interesting to learn how people are looking to solve that problem of giving employees opportunities within and across larger organizations when they cannot all work together and physically collaborate.
Yeah.
I think that was an observation, not a question.
Yeah. But I would agree. I guess onboarding, especially onboarding of new employees, is super difficult to do in a remote environment. But as you said, there are companies that have been doing it all the time. So there are ways of doing that in a good way. And I guess those water cooler moments that you mentioned are great. But if we don't get them back, and we probably won't, then we have to invent digital ones, and that's also possible, I guess.
And I think the question now is, now on the flip side, now running a company with 22 people from 13 countries, fully remote, beginning to see the trend in the fact that there's some people that you don't necessarily need to work specific hours. They're there to do a job and not to work 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or something. I'll be curious to learn how organizations are proposing or bringing those people on board to say, you're here for a job, but you don't necessarily need to work 9 to 5. But if you want to work at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., that's up to you. It'd be curious to learn how organizations are providing those opportunities for people that want to work more flexibly, especially in the remote
okay.
setting.
I guess one possible answer would be to get better at asynchronous work, because if not everybody works at the same time anymore, and this will be increasingly the case, especially over different time zones, etc., then you, as an organization, have to get better at asynchronous onboarding also. So you can still have one-on-one meetings digitally, but you will have lots of resources that people can just look up online. And that can also be a good way of onboarding people into a team. I hope. You can take mine. Können wir das Mikro mal anmachen? Hier ist noch ein Mikro, das ich in der Hand hatte.
Hi everyone, I'm Michal. Oops, this is very Lichi Translations in Israel, and I wanted to share and ask. I've always had a remote organization, people working from their homes. However, we always try to keep the team pretty close as far as the radius to my place, to my office, so we can have also face-to-face meetings. And my experience was at least like once a month to have a kind of staff meeting face-to-face, so that we can get to know each other and work better together. And I wanted also to hear from you, maybe, what would you do in that once a month meeting when it's face-to-face? Would it be more like talking about company issues, or maybe having some fun and getting people to enjoy themselves? And we usually combine. So if we'd go out once for breakfast in a cafe, or have a lecture or a workshop, or just like a brainstorming session of just talking about the company issues. And it's been working for me very well, but if anybody has other ideas on that, how to combine how to strengthen company connections when you work remote, and also when you have an option to meet face-to-face.
Excellent, thank you. Any other experiences in that realm? But I really think it's an excellent idea. If it's possible, if you're located in the same area, then you can do that. If you're located, more distributed, then you can still do that maybe once a year and come together, like we do here, right? I mean, you maybe know each other remotely, but now we meet, and it's a good thing. I think this lady over there.
We have time for 2 more quick questions. Martin is going to ask a question, and then we'll finish with Amy.
Okay, sorry, we can do the rest over coffee.
Thank you for the keynote. I guess I have a similar question to the one that was just asked. With in-person work, there's a lot of non-work related interaction. Like people after the meeting grab a coffee, maybe go to lunch, they joke around, they gossip, maybe they complain, and they talk about the problems, personal problems. And it really helps to build relationship between people. And with remote work, this is completely missing. So do you have any advice how this could be replaced with remote working? Maybe schedule some gossip sessions or something like this?
So could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. So how do you replace the human contact basically with remote work?
The human contact. Well, as I've shown on one slide, there's one aspect at least of remote work and hybrid meetings where we have even more human contact, because we are actually in our colleagues' living rooms quite often. And at least in my experience, often you do find the time to talk about personal and private things, even in remote meetings. But still, obviously, those let's grab lunch together moments cannot be replicated really well online. I think what the lady just mentioned could be a solution. Just get together monthly or every few months. That can help. But you can also say, let's meet online and not talk about work. No, let's have drinks. Let's have a remote party. It's not as great as a real party, but at least you can, get to know each other better.
Great, and one last question.
Last question.
Yeah, hi.
Ah.
Yes. I spent 4 months last year working in northeast Nigeria. We also have a totally remote organization where everybody's all over the world. We do have an office in northeast Nigeria, but one of the things I've been noticing is that our teams that are not in Europe in general, Europe or North America, have had a very different experience of COVID and the pandemic. And their relationship to collaboration tools and offices is very, very different. But I haven't been able to really put my finger on what that difference is and what that means for how we work. And I wondered if you had any thoughts, reflections on that.
Well, I can only give you, again, only a gut feeling. So, but my gut feeling would be that in the old days, organizations tended to have a center of gravity, center of power, which would often be in a certain location. Let's say North America, often, or big cities. So everyone who would not be there would not be in that center, and this going to the office every day and seeing each other, I guess, was a huge part of that. So my hope, let's put it that way, my hope would be that a more remote and hybrid work environment would level the playing field for everyone in those teams, no matter where they're from. But you're a skeptic, I can see that. Because?
My theory is that there are some languages, because here we are in this industry, that have a much more verbal, vocal, oral history and tradition than, say, English and French, that are often written down. There's storytelling that's written on paper, or digitally now. And so that the connection that you make with people is not through the written word, but through face-to-face conversations and things. And so our teams in some parts of the world are really struggling with using those tools, those collaboration tools, because they're not, my theory is that that's not how they're used to communicating, collaborating. That's not the medium of their hearts.
But you know what? That sounds, and there's still lots of work to do, obviously, but it sounds like there's also work to do for experts like you, language experts, translation experts, and all of you. Because you have to help translate those different cultural backgrounds into a remote working world. And I think that's a huge and important topic. Thanks for pointing that out.
For a great keynote presentation, so join me in saying thank you.
Thank you.